I'm going to read from Luke chapter 19.
Luke 19. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down and at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount."
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. You guys can have a seat. Well, how many of y'all are enjoying the Christmas season so far? Quick poll. I'm just going to tell you, this has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about this morning, but how many of you are decorate for Christmas before Thanksgiving people? Raise your hand. I want to see. Okay, keep your hands raised. What about before November 15th people? Anybody? Okay, you guys are my people. I'm so glad to hear that. We're finally in the part of the year where the after Thanksgiving people stop making fun of the before Thanksgiving people for decorating early. So I'm just so excited about that. So here at East Cobb last week, Houston kicked off our series for the month called Underneath the Tree. We're looking at 4 surprises that we find at the foot of the cross. And in particular, these are surprises that we don't want to be surprises for you. These are things that are important about faith, important about why Jesus came, important for why he came and did his ministry. And we don't want them to be a surprise for you later. So before we jump into what we're talking about this morning, I want to just do a quick review, just so we're all on the same page. The first part of that review is, what is Christmas? I feel like Christmas has so many different meanings to so many different people. For some, it's stress. For some reason, for some people, it's the stress of getting everything ready and getting everything together by December 24th so you can have that time with your family. For some people, it's the vibe of Christmas. Some of you just love like the Christmas trees and the lovely decor, and like that's what Christmas is to you. But we need to be on the same page on what we're talking about when we talk about Christmas. So last week, Houston defined Christmas in a good way. He defined Christmas as the celebration of Christ entering the world. And I really love that definition because it captures the incredibleness, that's not a word, but you know what I mean. It captures how incredible what happened on Christmas is. This is Jesus, this is Christ, this is the God of the universe interceding in the acts of humanity, interceding in the world to rescue us from our sin, from death. That's what happened on Christmas. That's what happened on Christmas. God came in human form to save us, to kick off God's plan for salvation. So in our youth ministry right now, we're kind of in a sister series to Underneath the Tree. And just a quick plug, if you're in 6th through 12th grade, Mr. Steve Curley is going to be bringing our messages the next 2 weeks. So really excited about that. But we're talking about this principle of why Jesus came and why Christmas is so significant, because we all know that it has to be more than the decorations. It has to be more than the Christmas movies. It has to be more than all of the cultural stuff that happens around Christmas. And this is the reason why we celebrate. We celebrate Christ entering our world. So last week, Houston gave us our first surprise under the tree, and that is that the cross is as much an invitation of rescue as it is a warning of coming agony. The cross is as much an invitation of rescue as it is a warning of coming agony. If you're interested to hear more about that, I'm just going to point you to our website to listen to the first part of that message, because there's a lot that went into that. I'd recommend you go and do that. But this morning, I want to start us off by asking you a question. I love asking questions because for me, when I hear a question, it helps me think. It helps me kind of put myself in the story that we're talking about. And the question I want to start off with today is, who did Jesus come for? Take a minute to think about that. Who did Jesus come to earth for? And if you're a good Christian churchgoer, your answer is everyone, right? Everyone. Like that's the answer. When you think about it, though, when I think about it, I think, who did Jesus come for, really? Right? We all have those people in our lives that we're like, we just kind of write them off. We're like, nah, I don't need to worry about them. Or maybe it's the person that cuts you off in traffic. Those people drive us nuts, and sometimes it's easy to just like write them off. For some of you, it may be a boss that makes your life miserable at work. Maybe it's a coworker that you have trouble getting along with, but there are people in our lives that we write off. And they may wrong us in some way, or they may do absolutely nothing. We just don't like them. And we ask, did Jesus really come to save everyone? And going a little bit deeper into that question, there are criminals in our jails. There are people that are living free, that are doing horrific things to other people, to our world. Did Jesus really come to save everyone, even those people? And I'm hearing the answer in the room, and I appreciate that. But sometimes that answer just doesn't sit right? I mean, we are here at church on a Sunday morning learning about how to be more like Jesus. We're learning about how to spread his goodness around the world, but then we're talking about Jesus came into the world at Christmas to save everyone, even the people who are not following Jesus. He came in for an invitation for everyone, even those that are not here in this room, even those that are not currently following Jesus, even those that are doing evil. So we're going to try to answer this question together this morning. And we're going to try to answer it because I think we've already talked a little bit about what the answer is, but we're going to try to answer it in a way that has a little bit of backing to it, an answer that I think will sit better with all of us than just saying, Jesus came to save everyone. And then we're left with still that uneasy feeling of, what about those people? We're going to do that by looking at a really common story that I bet you've heard before. And I don't quite know where the age cutoff is for this song, but a lot of you probably heard it from a song. We're talking about Zacchaeus. Anybody know who Zacchaeus was? Zacchaeus was a wee little man, right? And a wee little man was he. We're going to talk about the story of Zacchaeus. And the story of Zacchaeus is one of those that I heard a lot as a kid. It was one of the children's stories that we talked about, and it was awesome. We loved learning about Zacchaeus. We loved learning the songs, and there were some really excellent truths that we learned as a kid. But there are some stories in Scripture that we learn as a kid, and they're awesome when we learn them as a kid. And then we kind of put them aside for 20 years, 15 years, 30 years, however many. And then we come back to them, and we study them, and they take on completely different meaning. They take on completely new depth. They apply to our lives in ways that we never would have thought they would have applied to our lives. So that's kind of the story with Zacchaeus. I've read this story several times, and it wasn't until I actually sat down to study it that the true significance of Zacchaeus and the true significance of Jesus going to the home of Zacchaeus was really unlocked. So we're going to read this together. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and open up to Luke chapter 19. And while you're doing that, I want to give you a little bit of background on Zacchaeus. We're going to read all of this here. I just want to give you a little bit of background before we get started. First thing you need to know about Zacchaeus was he was an Israelite. He lived in Israel. Second thing is that he was a tax collector. If you've heard the story of Zacchaeus before, we've probably touched on tax collectors before. They were pretty much the bottom of the barrel in Israelite society. People did not like them one little bit. There was no ounce of like in there for tax collectors. And that was because tax collectors essentially extorted their neighbors out of their money. So in the Roman government, they didn't have an IRS like we have. They hired it out to other people. And when you hire things out to other people, sometimes, especially in this case, there's a lot of fraud that happened. And those tax collectors collected a lot more money than they needed and really put a huge burden on the Israelite people. So Zacchaeus was one of those guys, but he was even a step above that. He was kind of the boss of the tax collectors in Jericho. We're going to read he was a tax collector, and Zacchaeus probably had several other tax collectors underneath him. So the best example that I can give you because it's kind of hard for us to understand how absolutely hated tax collectors were. This is an example that was given to me this week, and it really is the best way to compare it. People saw them like we see drug dealers in our society. They saw tax collectors as people who will sell things to other people, knowing that they're going to harm them for personal profit. So think about how you see drug dealers in our society, and maybe you've been personally impacted by that. Think about how you see them and apply it to this story as we're reading it. Let's go ahead and get into Luke chapter 19, verse 1. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There's a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. Missed a slide, sorry about that. But the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. I love this. Meanwhile, so while the people were grumbling about Zacchaeus, Zacchaeus was standing before the Lord. And he said, I will give half my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I have cheated people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much. Jesus responded, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. Now, I love the story of Zacchaeus because there are so many places in there that I can kind of put myself into the story. I can put myself into the story of Zacchaeus sometimes, like where you're kind of disliked in certain circles, right? And you can kind of feel the pressure that Zacchaeus had. I can also, and probably more so, put myself in the position of the townspeople that are judging Zacchaeus, that are standing there grumbling when Jesus goes to meet with Zacchaeus, sitting there grumbling, why is Jesus, this notorious rabbi, like this big famous rabbi, why is he going to eat with the worst person in town? And there's another interesting dimension to this story of Zacchaeus that kind of humbles me just a little bit when I read it, because it's easy for me to go, oh yeah, why was he going to eat with him? Like, that doesn't make sense. But when you look at other translations, some of you may have the English Standard Version, if you have that Bible. Some of you may have the New American Standard Version, or even parts of the New International Version. It translates Zacchaeus' words in a little bit of a different way. It adds another dimension to his comments. So the verse that we're talking about is, let me see if I can find it, verse 8. If you're turning in your Bibles to verse 8. The one that we just read from the New Living Translation says that Zacchaeus says, I will give half my wealth to the poor. I will pay back 4-fold. But depending on your translation, English Standard Version is one of those, Zacchaeus actually says, Lord, I'm already giving half my wealth to the poor. I'm already refunding people that I may have cheated. I'm already doing all these things. Like, Zacchaeus is telling Jesus, again, depending on the translation you're looking at, he's telling Jesus, I'm already do these things. So for me, it adds a different dimension to the story because, I don't know exactly which one is more true, honestly, but it adds a dimension to the story because did the townspeople, people of Jericho, did they really know Zacchaeus? Or did they just judge Zacchaeus because of his profession? Did they judge Zacchaeus based on one thing? Because if we're looking at those other translations, Zacchaeus possibly could have been the best tax collector in the Roman Empire. He could have been the most upstanding, ethical tax collector in the entire Roman Empire. Now, that doesn't really, cover the fact that he was still a tax collector, but he was trying to do his best. He was trying to be upstanding. He was trying to be fair to people. But the people of Jericho, and I guess us when we read this, is really quick to judge Zacchaeus and just assume because he was a tax collector, he's a pretty terrible guy. So I point that out to you just because I find myself doing that so much in like my daily life, my daily routine. I'm sure you relate to this as well, to where somebody will do one thing or they'll say one thing to you, or you may see something online about somebody, and all of a sudden their reputation is tarnished for all eternity in your mind. Whether you know them or not. You may not know this person, you may not know their story, you may not know their background, but just this one event, this one characteristic about them has made you write them off as somebody, maybe they're too far gone for the gospel. So there's another dimension to this story besides just Zacchaeus and Zacchaeus as a person. There's also a dimension to the story of why Jesus came. In this story itself, Jesus is also telling us, besides saying, in this case, don't judge a book by its cover, he's also telling us, this is why I came to earth. The end of the story, verse 10, Jesus responded, "Salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and save those who are lost." So this last statement right here, for the Son of Man has come to seek and save those who are lost. I will run past that so fast when I'm reading this and I'm studying this on my own. I'll just race right by it. But this phrase has so much significance. Jesus is telling us in this phrase, number one, why he's here, why Christmas happened, why Jesus came on Christmas. And two, he's telling us why it matters and why it's significant. So, to unlock this phrase, we need to look at one phrase here. It says Son of Man. Have anybody heard that phrase before? Raise your hand. I know Houston's talked about it several times, but we're going to dig into it again because it really helps us understand the gravity of the statement that Jesus is making to Zacchaeus. So, in order to get it, we need to look back at the book of Daniel. When was the last time you guys went to the book of Daniel? Been a while for me. We're going to look at the book of Daniel. Now, the book of Daniel is the same Daniel, the guy that wrote this, is the same guy that was in the lion's den, the same guy whose friends were in the fiery furnace. This is the same Daniel. The first 6 chapters of the book of Daniel are all narrative, and they're all talking about Daniel's life in Babylon. The second section, though, these are visions that God gives Daniel. And I'm going to be honest with y'all, I'm fascinated by these, and I could talk about this for 15 hours. We're not going to do that, don't worry. But it's absolutely fascinating when you read through it. But the title Son of Man is not just one that Jesus pulled out of the air. He took it from a vision that Daniel had in the book of Daniel. So if you guys want to turn with me to Daniel chapter 7, we're not going to read the whole thing because, to be honest with you, it gets a little weird, and we don't have time to talk about why it gets weird. But Daniel chapter 7, in this vision that Daniel has, essentially he sees 4 different beasts. This is the beginning of the vision. 4 different beasts, and we can talk about what they symbolize later on, but a common interpretation is that they symbolize different ancient powers of the day. So Daniel, the first several verses is Daniel describing these verses. And then we're taken to an incredible scene. Daniel, in this vision, he's shown something that I think a lot of us could only hope to see in a vision in our lifetime. It is incredible. It's Daniel chapter 7, verse 9 is where it starts. Daniel watched as thrones were put in place, and the Ancient One sat down to judge. His clothing was as white as snow. His hair was like purest wool. He sat on a fiery throne with wheels of blazing fire, and a river of fire was pouring out, flowing from his presence. Millions of angels ministered to him. Many millions stood to attend him. Then the court began its session, and the books were opened. So I know we're deviating a little bit from Luke right here, but just try to picture in your mind, close your eyes if you can, picture the scene that Daniel is seeing. He's seeing God on his throne, sitting down on his throne to judge. He's seeing millions and millions of angels and people ministering to him. He's seeing God sitting on this throne of fire and a river of fire flowing from his throne as he sits down to begin his court session. Now, I'm going to read these next 2 verses for you just because they're in the progression here. Don't get hung too much on it because they're kind of confusing. But verse 11, I continued to watch because I could hear the little horn's boastful speech. I kept watching until the 4th beast was killed and its body was destroyed by fire. The other 3 beasts had their authority taken from them, but they were allowed to live a little while longer. Here comes the Son of Man part. As my vision continued that night, I saw someone like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient One and was led into his presence. He was given authority, honor, and sovereignty over all the nations of the world, so that people of every race and nation and language would obey him. His rule is eternal. It will never end. His kingdom will never be destroyed. So again, just close your eyes. Picture this scene in God's throne room. He's sitting down on his throne to judge. You see this figure coming onto the scene to take authority of the nations of the world. Now, put yourself in the shoes of ancient Israelites in Jesus' day. They're under occupation of Rome. The brutal occupiers are just kind of oppressing them in this situation. And then Jesus comes along, and throughout his ministry, he refers to himself as this Son of Man. Several times. This is the most common title that Jesus uses to describe himself. So the Israelites were picturing a victorious king-like figure coming in essentially to overthrow the Roman government and to free them, to liberate them. And it says his rule is eternal, his kingdom will never end. They were looking for a figure who was going to rule forever. He's going to rule Israel forever. And we come back to Luke chapter 19, come back to Luke chapter 4, and he uses this phrase to describe Zacchaeus and his interaction with Zacchaeus. So instead of seeing Jesus taking authority over Israel from Rome, crushing the Roman Empire, instead, what we see is Jesus going to eat with the worst of the town. We see Jesus declaring salvation over this guy who the entire town of Jericho assumes is terrible. He's a terrible person. Fast forward to us, in the same context of how much you hate a drug dealer. This is what Jesus is doing. It doesn't make sense. It's so confusing because they're like, the Son of Man is a victorious, king-like figure who's coming to take authority with an eternal rule. But instead, Jesus, out of all the righteous people in Jericho, he's going to eat with Zacchaeus. What we find, though, when we explore the Gospels, we explore Scripture and this story, we find that Jesus did come to conquer and serve, but just not in the way anybody expected. Jesus, on his way, as he was going through Jericho, he was on his way to Jerusalem. He was on his way to the cross. Jesus came to conquer and save, but not in the way that anyone expected. He came to conquer through service and humility, even to the point of death, and even for the least of those. He says in his statement to Zacchaeus, "For the Son of Man has come to seek and save those who are lost." So the significance of the story of Zacchaeus and why Jesus came to earth is because Jesus came to conquer, he came to rule, he came to take authority, but just not in the way anybody expected. He came to conquer and serve, or came to conquer through the cross. That was the ultimate conquering that he did. That's the ultimate authority. When he went on the cross, he died and he was resurrected. He was taking authority over all the nations of the world and declaring victory over death. And I think that's pretty cool. Pretty cool thing about what Jesus did is he took our assumptions about what he was coming to do. He reversed them and said, "This is why I'm here." So when Jesus said, "Salvation has come to this home today for this man who the city, the town, thought was the worst, thought was terrible, thought was horrible. He's shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man, this victorious figure who's going to rule eternally, has come to seek and save those who are lost." Just like Zacchaeus, people like Zacchaeus. Jesus came to restore all of humanity back to himself. All of humanity, no matter who they are, no matter what they've done, no matter what their past is, no matter what their personality is like, no matter what. He came to restore us all back to himself and ultimately to destroy the power of death that holds us hostage. So that brings us to the second surprise of Christmas. Second surprise under the tree is that Jesus humbled himself and served everyone, even the worst and lowest of society. And he's calling you to do the same. Essentially, Jesus is telling us that no one is too far gone for the gospel. No one is too far gone for the gospel. And this just hits home for me because it's just so easy. It's so easy to write people off. It's so easy, and maybe not even cognitively, maybe you're not like thinking that you're writing somebody off, but it's so easy to just be like, I don't need to worry about them. I don't need to worry about them. Somebody else will take care of it. Somebody else will talk to them. So easy to do that. I've done that before. I bet you've done that before too. Somebody that maybe you don't like, somebody that makes your life difficult. Maybe it is one of those people that we see on the news that's perpetuating these terrible acts. It's so easy for us to write them off. But Jesus is telling us through this story and through many others throughout the gospel is that that's not how he operates. No one is too far gone for the gospel. One of his closest disciples, Matthew, was a tax collector. No one is too far gone for the gospel. In our youth ministry, the last 3 months, we've been in a series. We've been talking about our purpose. We've been talking about the purpose that Jesus gives us as followers of him. And I think this is the same purpose that Jesus is giving us in the book of Luke, in this chapter we just read. We pulled this purpose from Matthew chapter 5, the Sermon on the Mount. We said, when Jesus said, "You are the light of the world. We're like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let our good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise our Heavenly Father." Our purpose is to be the light of the world, but to be the light of the world to everyone, no matter their past, no matter their background, no matter what they've done or what they're going to do. Our purpose is to be the light of the world. So, how can we do that? I'm just going to give you a few little things that, as I was thinking through this, that I think can help us this week go ahead and start living out this purpose in the way that Jesus did with Zacchaeus. The first one is to be the last to judge. The world has enough judges. There are enough people judging people in the world that really, Christians, Jesus followers, we should be the last people to judge others. We should be the last people to look at somebody and assume that we know them, assume that we know their story, assume that we know their motives. We should be the last person to do that. And I'm not just talking about people that are right next to you. I'm talking about people that you see on TV, people that you talk to on the phone, people on social media. However you're communicating with people, we should be the last to judge. Can't tell you how frustrating I get sometimes when I see Christians battling on social media with each other. And in some of those comments, I see assumption after assumption after assumption after assumption about somebody when they really don't know them. Be the last to judge. Number 2, seek to understand. Seek to understand. Ask questions. Don't just not judge people, but seek to understand people and where they're coming from. I think what we'll find is that 99% of the people that we think are terrible, evil people that are too far gone for the gospel, they're actually pretty good people. I think we'll find that they're actually pretty solid humans. We've just judged them a little bit too quickly, and we didn't seek to understand their circumstance. So that's my challenge to you this morning. Be the last to judge and seek to understand. I think the story of Zacchaeus is such a powerful story. It's such a powerful example for us and how Jesus, no matter what culture said, no matter what Zacchaeus may or may not have been doing, Jesus didn't care about that. He singled Zacchaeus out of everybody in Jericho to go and be with him, to go and spend time with Zacchaeus. Didn't care what he'd done, what he had been doing, and really didn't care what other people thought. That's what he was here to do. He was here to conquer through service and humility. Next week, Houston's going to pick us up in part 3 of Underneath the Tree. Look forward to seeing you then. Let's go ahead and pray as we close. God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this time that we have together to worship, to encourage each other, to learn together. Thank you for giving us all these people in this room that want to come and worship you, want to come and be more like you every day. I ask that you help us to be a light in our communities, even to those people that sometimes we ask, did Jesus really come to save them? Seriously? Like, you're wanting me to go and talk to them? Like, come on. Even those people. Help us to be a light in our community. Help us to live by your example of no one is too far gone for the gospel. In your name we pray. Amen.